It is 8:30. My pleasure to welcome you all to our final Audit and Risk Committee for 2021. I cannot believe where the year has gone to. Special welcome to Sam Nicole. Sam is partner at Ernst & Young, and as I indicated at the last meeting, Grant Taylor had completed his 6 years as the Audit Director on the Porirua City Audit, and he has been replaced with Sam. So, and welcome Casey as well. So I'm sure, Sam, that Casey will be able to direct us through the reports from EY today. So welcome everybody. Do we have any apologies? All right, there's no apologies. Public participation, no requests have been received. So, and conflicts of interest, always an important part to be aware of any conflicts. Has anybody got any conflicts that they wish to declare for today's agenda? There being none, agenda item 4, notification of extraordinary business. There have been no items received. So we move to agenda item 5, confirmation of minutes. So our last meeting was on the 16th of September. Are there any corrections to the minutes that are in our papers? Sorry? Okay, there are no changes, so it's my pleasure to move the minutes. Do I have a seconder, please? Seconded by Graham Mitchell. Thank you, Graham. It's been moved and seconded that these minutes be approved as the true and accurate record of that meeting. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried. Right, agenda item 6.1. It's the progress of the work undertaken by the Ombudsman's Office earlier this year. Members of the Audit and Risk Committee will recall that we had a report earlier in the year, and this is a progress report on the work that has been done. So I will move that the report at 6.1 be put on the table for discussion. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Trone. Okay, it's open for discussion. Who is Moana going to speak briefly to the paper? Thank you. Take it as read, but just highlight the points in your paper. Thanks, Moana.
Thank you. Good morning, Council. As you will note, last year we had the review by the Ombudsman, and we performed well under that. There were no recommendations from the Ombudsman for our practice, although we had 38 actions that he suggested we follow up on. Earlier this year, I came to you with a report showing the things that we had done, and this is now to follow up on the things that were outstanding. We had 38 suggestions from the Ombudsman, and they have now all been dealt with or are in the process of being dealt with, and I attach evidence of that to your report. So if you have any questions around any of those, we'll be happy to take them.
Thank you very much, Moana. So the matter is open for discussion. Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, look, page 13, the residents' survey under Trust and Financial Management. It's just a yes/no question whether or not they think we've done a good job, but surely it needs a comment with it as well to say why they think that is the case, that we're really bad in particular, or if we're really good. Is there a chance of that? Oh, sorry, yeah, page 13. Yes. Just room for a comment, I thought, at the bottom, to justify their...
Would somebody like to attempt to answer that for Councillor Duncan?
I think not managing that survey, but looking at the other questions within the survey, it tends to be a yes and a no answer, and there's not usually room for comment on that, but that's something that our team could certainly talk to them about it in the next one. Yeah.
All right, if there's no further discussion, certainly from my point of view, bringing an independent lens to it, I think this has been a very worthwhile exercise for the council. Some very good recommendations coming from the exercise undertaken by the Ombudsman, and it appears that the work in following this up has been concentrated on the right things, and a good outcome has been received. So I think this now closes this agenda item for the Audit and Risk Committee. So thank you for that. All right, we've been asked to note this report or receive this report. So it's been moved and seconded. All those in favour that we receive this report, please say aye. Contrary, carried. Agenda item 6.2 is the six-monthly report on our legislative compliance. We've been asked to receive the report for information and note the survey results for the period April to September. I'm happy to move that. It's been seconded by Councillor Ford. Now open for discussion. So, Joe, are you going to speak to this briefly? Thank you.
So this is our standard six-monthly review. As we go through the process, we're refining the questions to make sure that we're actually targeting the compliance, and we're looking at where the compliance. So you'll see that the number of questions has actually decreased. That's when we're doing the test to make sure that we're actually asking questions that's relevant to council. We had two where through the survey non-compliance was picked up. The first one is in relation to the period between when the rates instalment is received, the date of the rates instalment, and the date of the rates penalty imposed. And if there is actually a rebate, the system would not differentiate between the couple of days between rates instalment and rates penalty. If there was a rebate put in, we've now put in a process that no rebates will be processed between the time of the rates instalment and setting the rates penalty, so it will not arise. The other was a coding error, and that has been fixed and the process has been put in place. And there's explanations of the partially compliant, but we're working through those as well. So overall, it's a good result, and we continue to get really good participation across the leadership team that's responsible for completing this.
Thank you, Joe. Discussions. Councillor Turin.
Thank you. Yeah, just a question actually in relation to the coding error one. So the corrective action identified that finance will correct the posting for the first quarter of 5,500. What's the implication of the rest of that, I guess, that related to last year? Do we have to be worried about that at all?
Last year's already closed off and audited, so it was just noting it. So it's just a disclosure, but we've corrected it for this year. We can't go back and reopen to do that, but we thought it was important that we disclosed.
Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, on page 52, item 8, Local Government Act, road closures were approved by the CEO via an old but still existing delegated authority. Are delegated authorities open-ended, or do they are they finite?
At the beginning of each triennium, you approve the delegations. So, no, they're not open-ended. This particular one was trailing unhelpfully through, it was custom and practice rather than the delegation doesn't exist actually for me to sign off road closures.
No further discussion on that matter. Again, this is an important process done every 6 months for council. It always highlights some issues that require sort of following up, and that's been the case here. So We've moved and seconded. All those in favour that we receive this report and note the survey results for the period April to September 21. Please say aye. Contrary, carried. Agenda item 6.3 is the update to the strategic risk report. We've been asked to receive this report for information. I'm happy to move in that direction, seconded by the Mayor. Thank you. Alison, are you going to step us through the highlights of this work, please?
Sure, thank you, Chair. Look, I'll take it as read. In June at the Audit and Risk Committee, you asked me to unpick the sector change risk a little bit, so I've attempted to do that in the executive summary. And look, as you start to do that, you soon start to realise that all roads lead to some workforce challenges for council. I've also updated the emerging risks, which we'll continue to watch. I think we'll continue to see the supply chain impacts, social unrest as COVID and people's freedoms start to be challenged. I think that'll continue to play out for us here as well. And then I've also provided some updates in the risk details, mostly to better reflect the current climate and growth challenges. Happy to take any questions on the report.
Thank you, Alison. Questions to Councillor Duncan.
Under 64/67 page, climate change impacts, the cost of carbon currently $40 a tonne. I understood that we're up to $70 a tonne for that now, but it goes on to say that'll have significant impact on the financial viability of running the landfill. But don't we just pass those charges on in the landfill?
Yes, it is now 74, so this was, yes, we do pass it on.
Question? Yep. Page 67, technology. Under current controls, we list cyber liability insurance. And then on 7780, that our premiums increased by around 70% and may not be available next year. What's our plan B?
Through you, Chair. Our plan B is to make sure we've got really good internal control so we're not reliant on insurance. So the team had done quite a bit of work on their roadmap and sort of a review, which I think we talked to in public excluded last time. And so, like I say, the plan is to not need insurance, not be reliant on insurance. That will be a challenge for others, not just us, that retaining cyber insurance.
Mayor.
I see that you've had cyber issues and you've dealt that with staff. Are you going to do cyber issues with councillors?
Through the Chair, I can pick that up and work with the BTG team to do a workshop with councillors on cyber.
Councillor Taran.
Thank you. Yeah, so as far as I can tell, I think the main strategic risk category that there's been a change in is in relation to workforce, and that's jumped up a bit. I was wondering if you could just speak to that.
Yeah, look, I think it's just recognising that, we are going to have recruitment and retention challenges with so much change and, like needing a bigger workforce around Three Waters, those types of things. And so it's just recognising that, that's going to play out. Jerry might want to talk to that a bit more in terms of whether we're having issues currently, but I think there are often the hard to recruit roles, potentially in Nick's area of the business that we're already sort of starting to plan forward about. Does that answer?
Yeah, well, we are finding that turnover is up a little bit. It's harder to fill roles, even administrative roles which were relatively easy to fill in the past are becoming more difficult. We're looking at ways of making our advertising for roles a little bit more innovative and interesting, doing a bit more networking, and we're started a process working with some of the other local councils to see if there are any opportunities for shared resourcing or ways that we can work more effectively together, but it's pretty early days on that at the moment.
Certainly, from my view, this is not a council alone issue. The entire labour market is probably the tightest it's been for many, many decades. The central government market is impacted by the wage freeze there. There's many people churning through positions and changing. and generally across all markets in all parts of New Zealand, they would be seeing a similar sort of increase, if you like, in the risk around their workforce. Any other discussion? Thank you, Alison. As I've said before, I think Council benefits from a very clear and concise the depiction of the strategic risk. The heat map I certainly find very helpful in sort of understanding what those key risks are and the direction of travel. So a worthwhile exercise. All right, it's been moved and seconded that we receive this report for information. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried. Thank you. Agenda item 6.4. This is our quarterly update on risk and assurance activity. We've been asked to receive the report for information. Note that the 2021-22 risk and assurance plan is on track and that the risk management policy has been reviewed with minor updates. I'm happy to move in that direction. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Duncan. Open for discussion. Alison, again, I think the floor is yours to introduce us to this paper. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. As highlighted there, I will take it as read. It's been a busy quarter, but as I said, the plan is on track. Provided an overview of the insurance renewals that we have updated in November. And as mentioned, cyber was a bit of a challenge to get that renewed, but that's in place for another 12 months, so that's good. And just drawing your attention to the risk management policy, that's attached because obviously the Audit and Risk Committee have responsibilities around risk management, so I've left the changes in for that just so that you can note it. Happy to take any questions on anything else in there.
Thank you, Alison. Discussions, questions? No, not being anything. You've obviously done a very good job, Alison, so answered all the questions. So thank you for that insurance update. That is really helpful to see the sort of the outcome of that, and I know that's a new piece of work for you this year, so thank you for bringing that one page in this report. All right, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favour that we receive this report, please say aye. Contrary, carried. Agenda item 6.5. Again, a regular report that we have at each of our meetings on the Treasury investment and liability management. We've been asked to receive the report for the period to the end of September. So I'm happy to move in that direction, seconded by the Mayor. Thank you. Zach, thank you very much for this report. So just step us through, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this is our quarterly report as part of our overall Treasury management policy. So this is for the period ended 30th of September 2021. As at 30th of September, we are fully compliant with investment and liability management policy, and the change from the previous one you've seen is we've implemented a PwC full report, which covers it off hopefully at a better, higher overview level, so you can see the direct compliance and the key statistics relating to investment and liability management. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, Zach. You did indicate to us that this reporting was on an evolutionary journey. We've seen the benefits of this. I'm beginning to understand this report much better now. So thank you and PwC for the work that's done on this. Councillor Leggett.
Just a question on page 95 where we see the average interest rate cost 2.46%. Given current situation in New Zealand and around the world in terms of rising interest rates, how concerned should we be into the future with regard to some of the things that are happening externally and will impact us inevitably?
So there's probably a two-pronged attack. So in terms of our long-term planning, we always built in a contingency of interest rate rise. It's typically about 1% over the current market, and that's built in across the 30 years in terms of management of risk. Our investment and liability management policy is structured in such a way it limits either front-load or back-loading interest costs, so it spreads the associated interest rates across years to minimise any interest rate impact in the interim. So it takes a long-term view. So that's a part of working with PwC and the funding buckets and minimum policy minimums and maximums to address that. So it is a risk. Not for us specifically, but for the sector as a whole, but we manage that through our policy constraints.
All right, no further discussion on Treasury. Thank you, Zach. It's been moved and seconded that we note this report for our information. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried. Right, agenda item 6.6, different location on the agenda than normal for a health and safety report. So we've been asked to receive this report. I'm happy to move in that direction. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Duncan. So we have the report in our papers. Can I ask you, Angela, to address this report for the quarter? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the regular quarterly health and safety report for the period ending 30 September. You'll note in the report that our reporting is a little bit lower in this quarter for incidents and near misses. That's due to the alert level 4 restrictions and our facilities not being open and people not being able to physically go out and work. And also in the report this time, after feedback from the last committee meeting, we have included the training is now broken down into 3 separate groups. So we have induction training, role-specific training, and voluntary training that staff choose to attend. The training was really well attended in the last quarter with 100% of attendance rate, except for to one course where 2 staff couldn't attend due to sickness, so we've rebooked them in for that one. And you'll also notice that we've included some contractor comparison stat graphs at the end, just so that you can see some trend data from Downer, EnviroWaste and Wellington Water over the past 12 months. There has also been a slight increase in usage for our employee assistance program over the quarter, which is probably reflective of the changing environment that we've been going through over the last quarter. And it's really great to see that people feel safe enough to reach out for help and ask for the help that they need. So I think that's a really positive thing for people. Yeah, happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Angela. Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, just for a note of clarification, page 103, Downers near miss, September service strike, where a worker accidentally struck a gas main. It says the report tells us the services were located in potholed. What does potholed mean?
I can't speak to that, sorry, I'm not sure. I would assume it means that they filled it in. I'm
Really?
not sure. Yeah, I'd have to check with Downer.
Thanks.
Can anybody help Councillor Duncan out, or should we? Oh, so thank you. Can I also indicate the increased rise in staff utilising the employer assistance program? Again, is not a council-specific issue. I see that all around the country, all around different types of entity. It's just a factor of the situation that the world finds itself in now, and many more people are very anxious about it. And I think it just goes to show the importance of having such a policy in place, and as Angela said, people are comfortable to use it. So. All right, any further discussion on health and safety? All right, it's been moved that we receive the report for information. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried. Right, the report on control findings from Ernst & Young, agenda item 6.7. I will move that we receive the report for information and also note the control findings and agreed management actions. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Ford. Peter, are you going to speak briefly to this before we ask the auditors to comment on any of the matters in here? So, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So we've received our EY report from the auditors for the year ended 30th of June 2021. So they've made 9 observations in that report. All of them were low, except for 2 that they observed were moderate and needed moderate attention. So the 2 that were moderate were around our roading assets. So the issue there is, I think we just need to make sure that our information is complete and that we review it completely before we pass it on to external valuers to do their work. The second one was around sort of an IT finding, and that was around terminated users and just making sure that when an employee leaves council that their account's terminated quickly.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter. Sam, can I pass to you, and you may well very quickly pass to Casey for comments. But Sam, again, welcome to your first Audit and Risk Committee at Porirua City Council.
Cool. Thank you, Chair. It's a pleasure to be here and pick up from the work Grant's done over the last 6 years and be the appointed auditor of Porirua going forward. As you noted, this relates to the 2021 year that was completed under Grant, but as the incoming appointed auditor, take heart from 2 things. Not a great volume of findings, so something the council should be proud of, and no carryover matters from previous years. So as the incoming auditor, understanding the robustness of the control environment is quite important. And the takeaway from the committee across those findings would be you've got this Datascope project that's later in the agenda, really looking at those IT observations we have and how you set yourself up on a good platform going forward as you put in a new system. And further to Councillor Duncan's comment, the risk approach in face of challenges around cybersecurity means the hygiene around those measures is a really important point that Council can control and take ownership of. But Casey, do you have any comments on our report?
No, I think Peter's really nicely summarised the 2 moderate risk matters that we had raised. Wasn't planning on going through each of the low risk matters, and we didn't identify any high risk matters, which is also good to see. So yeah, no further comment from me, but we're both happy to take any questions that anyone may have.
Councillor Leggett.
Sorry, the roading assets issue again. Can you just explain that a little bit further in terms of what the issue is there and how we're going to improve in that area?
So there were a couple of different issues there. So one of the issues was there were some vested assets that had already been included in the council's ledger before we provided that to the valuers. So it's just making sure we're not doubling up and that we're sure of the information that we're providing to them before they do the valuation. There's also some, we need to look at the RAMS system and when information's going in RAMS just to make sure it's going in at the right point in time and being picked up in that valuation at the right time.
So on that basis, I mean, I note, having had a little bit of experience with RAM before, there seems to be ongoing issues with RAM and getting staff trained or whatever to make sure that they use it properly. So
yes, it is an ongoing issue.
Yeah. So, I mean, I assume we have things in place to be able to make sure that we handle. I mean, it's not a huge issue, is it? The vested assets thing, I understand. But it's not going to impact on things going forward.
It is a complex system to use because it's been designed by it's Wakitahi system that covers all of council. And going through the Datascope project, that is one of the complexities of how do you actually enable the data to get it through, and we're working through that as well. But it is a complex system. And it's for one purpose, yet our asset management system, we need information from our asset management system as well. So it's, I think it will be something that will continue, we need to continue to focus on, and it will be year-on-year improvements. I do think we'll consistently find gaps, but we need to be open that there is actually, there is gaps being focusing on the assets that come on board each time. So this one will be, how do we bring the link roads on? That will be a big issue for us this year. And it's just that focus of being mindful of the complexities. But it's a standard issue across all councils.
Can I just draw attention to the point that the auditors rightfully have on page 119, in that there is a change in interpretation in the international accounting world as to how you account for cloud computing costs. And this has the potential, not right now, but certainly in 2023, of causing quite a change to the council's financial statements. And I know that your CFO has done some work on that particular point already. So perhaps if I can ask Joe just to comment briefly on what's being done there.
So just to put it in context to how historically we've actually bought the licence and we've actually owned the right to use the software for a period of time. And then, so we bring it on as an intangible asset and we capitalise all the implementation costs and the licence fees, and then we depreciate it over the term of the asset. And that scenario is that we can elect when we want to take releases, when we take upgrades. But reflecting back on what's happened with, you look at your Microsoft Office, every now and then you go in and all of a sudden it looks a bit different because we're now software as a service and it's working in the cloud environment. So to give a context. So most of the software is actually moving to the cloud environment as software as a service. And the complexity that we're working through is how do we recognise a development against rating? Because the issue would be if it's... I've talked with the other CFOs and councils are actually funding the establishment cost, which this interpretation said would be an operating cost. They're actually looking to debt fund it. And the issue that I'm working through at the moment would be how does that then work into our balanced budget so that we're not rating for the, we've got the operating costs for bringing software as a service in, that we don't actually have a rate increase within that year because actually this year we're implementing Datascape, but the value of that would be over multiple years. But the accounting treatment requires, the interpretation, the accounting treatment says that you would expense it in the year it's incurred. So I'm working through what does that mean if we debt fund it and how does that impact on our balanced budget.
Councillor Turin.
Yeah, just a question to that. Worst case scenario, it doesn't go the way that we wanted and we have to expense everything. How significant an impact on rates would that be?
I still believe the appropriate way would be to debt fund it so that it doesn't fall on the investment that we've done in Datascape as software as a service and the configuration will get the value over multiple years. So therefore we'd look at some mechanism of debt funding, but the impact it would have is on our statement about a balanced budget. But I would not be recommending that it's a rate impact.
Complicated, much more work to be done in this regard, and I'm sure this topic will be back to this committee in the future. Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, the letter from Grant Taylor on page 107 tells us the audit procedures are selective and don't address all procedures and controls, so don't assume there's no additional matters. Do we just rely on Ernst & Young's finding things, or do we have a practice of actually tracking things down as well?
First of all, the first reliance on our internal controls, and we sign off in the statement of representation about having appropriate internal controls. So the internal controls sit as the responsibility of management.
And let's not overlook the work done by internal audit work as part of council's controls as well. All right, any further discussion on the year-end report of control findings from EY? Thank you for all those involved. So it's been moved and seconded that we receive this report. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried. Right, that morphs us very well into agenda item 6.8 on the update of Datascape. Major project for council, major interest on this project from this Audit and Risk Committee, and it's a regular agenda item. So we have a update report as at the 30th of November, and we've been asked to receive that report for information. I'm happy to move in that regard. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Morale. Open for discussion. Joe, can you step us through this one-page report, please?
So on the 4th of October, we did go live with Datascape Finance and Property and Rating, and we successfully did the second rates instalment for the year, including the generation of the rates invoices and the first instalment and the applying of the penalty. I mean, we are still in transition. I'm not saying it's been a complete soft landing. We realised that we were the first organisation that was going live with Datascape, and we have had our teething problems. But we are now getting into a more of a business as usual scenario. We did make a decision to defer the go live of My Customer and the digital front counter that was timetabled to go live with the finance and property and rating, but we made the decision to mitigate the risk to the organisation that we would put that out, and that's now timetabled for early February. That is proved to be a very good decision, because the big issues that we faced through the implementation is the amount of migrated data we had to bring across. It was a significant amount of migrated data, and reflecting back, doing it in October, even though we had a few glitches of the way, the volume, if we'd put it out at all, would have been too significant. So we've now completed the reconciliation of the migrated data. So we are comfortable that all the data that came across. We have identified, we did get some issues where something was purchased and ordered in Tech 1 and received in Datascape, so that's caused us 6 to 8 weeks, but you would expect something like that to happen because you ordered in one system and you're having to receipt and acknowledge in another system. What the big issues that we have got is now we've gone to software as a service and release management, and we're negotiating with Datacom, because the design was to do release management every 2 weeks. That would mean 1 week we'd be testing, and the next week that we'd be 1 week we'd be testing and test, and the next week we'd be testing in live. That onus is too much for us, so we're negotiating with Datacom at the moment to move out the release management. We're in the position for My Porirua and the digital front counter, because we've moved to role-based security, which does address one of the issues that was raised in the EY report. As we move, that's quite a change to us to move to role-based securities, and we're working through the workflow, which will be an issue that we're just settling that down to make certain that the flow goes as the flow is meant to go, and because we've always used name-based securities, so the security bit's been to the person, not the role, so that's one of the issues we're still working through at the moment. But we are getting through the issues. We're now scoping up the work to now progress to the rolling out of the regulatory models.
Lots of information. Since we met last, you'll be aware that the team went live with the finance, property and rating reporting. And can I say, from an external point of view, that was impressive. That's gone very well. It's what's called a big bang approach, so that you put the whole lot in at once. And around this country, projects like that and putting them in that sort of big bang way is fraught with danger. There are many examples of disasters, but that's gone reasonably well here at Porirua City Council. There's been some learnings, there's been some challenges, but that was to be expected. And I think the team is to be congratulated on a great job, and I'm sure that the council will see many benefits from this project over the years to come. So still a lot of work to do, but congratulations. Councillor Turin.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a comment on a question, actually. The comment, first of all, Joe, I just want to acknowledge you and your team for the work that you've done on this and how great it is to see a Datascape report with no red in the status dashboard. It's been really great that we've moved to that stage. And in terms of the orange that's still there, I guess two things. One, do you primarily put that down to the teething issues that are identified that we're still experiencing? And two, when are we likely to be at a stage where we're just trucking along with this as BAU and everything's green?
Look, I mean, it is a significant change, and we've got. I think it's another 18 months. Some of the teething problems we had, we didn't foresee. We are the first in New Zealand to do it. I would say it would be amber for a significant period of time, and to be honest, if I did a green report to you, I'd expect you to be questioning me on why it's green. I think we need to be aware there is going to be, we are finding everything for the first time. The good thing is the rates model, we're biting off small things. So we've still got a lot of work to do in the finance space and the property space. But the really good thing to do, and we're interfacing back to the old system, so we've got a timing between everything we capture in Datascape, because the property information is still in TM1, we're having to interface back to that. We'll have to continue to do that till we get the regulatory on board. So I think it's another 18 months. But we're on a journey, and we've got the first thing across the line, but we did have a few hiccups along the way.
Councillor Morale.
Just a question with the providers. Do we have a good rapport? I mean, we have recently in my own company last year changed software, and we were the guinea pigs, and we were ironing out things as we go. So are we getting any compensation for doing that and, and support from them?
I suppose like any relationship, we have our ups and downs. But we've got a strategic partnership. Every week I meet with one of the general managers, so reporting directly into the chief executive. This week we had an issue with releases. We escalated it so we've got direct access to the. We've had the chair of the board here, we've had the chief executive, we've got meet with the general manager. But as you go down Datacom, just like any organisation that's big, we do see there disconnects between we've got the marketers wanting to sell the product, we've got the developers developing the product, we've got the business analysts asking for different things, and we do have. For example, regulatory, it is the first model in New Zealand. We ask for things, we might be dealing with an Australian consultant who sees something different. But overall, we do have quite, we have the ups and the downs, but we have a very good escalation path. And yesterday morning when I escalated something, we got response by the end of the day. So.
Thank you, Joe. Wendy.
I'm not sure, Councillor Morale, if you were here when we were tussling whether we upgraded to Tech 1 or swapped horses, as it were. And we did get a significant cost advantage for being first cab off the rank. So we don't get any discount. There's no discount for any of the rest of it, but those setup costs were much less than the alternatives available in the market.
Thank you, Wendy. That segues in quite nicely to a comment or seeking explanation. In the middle of that one pager, Joe, we've got a total incurred and committed cost of 3.25 million. Is that the expected total of the direct costs for this project?
At the moment.
I'm not asking you to foresee the future, so but yeah, your best information at this stage is that's because I must admit I think that's reasonable value for what you're getting.
We are now embarking on the regulatory, so I would say that that's our best at the moment. We've got, as I said, there's pretty much another 18 months of change.
No further discussion. It's been moved and seconded that we receive this report for information. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried. I would now like to move a motion that we go into a public excluded session. We have 2 items to consider there, and that Sam Nicole and Casey Webster from Ernst & Young be permitted to remain in the meeting. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Duncan. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried.